Greetings and welcome to today's transmission. And I'm going to really carry on from where I left off last week. But before I do so, please subscribe to my channel and share with family and friends. Hit the bell notification so that you're notified on Mondays and Fridays for teaching lessons and Wisdom Wednesdays for a lovely meditation that brings Mondays and Fridays teachings together. At this current moment in time, I'm fusing the quantum world of reality transurfing with the tantric union world of consciousness and merging the two together, almost like merging the left and the right brains in a way at that 0 point. And before I start, also, I'd like you to have a look in the description below. Click on the link tree where you'll see a list of items. Number 1 is my new online course, which is called Coming Back to You, and it's half price at the moment. Number 2, please claim your free energized painting. You can also book yourself a free discovery call with me in line for mentoring, coaching, guidance, breathwork sessions, energy transmission sessions, and so on and so forth. So today's teaching or transmission is very much based on what we were speaking on last week about being awake, being asleep, the dream space, consciousness, the two sides of reality, on this side of the mirror and on the other side. And for a long time, people have understood that the world that we're living in does have a dualistic nature to it. On one hand, everything happens as we see it on a material level. And this can be more or less understood and explained from the point of view of natural sciences. However, on the other hand, when we encounter certain phenomena from subtle planes, the laws cease to be applicable. Why is it that we are unable to unite the differences as aspects of the reality in a single knowledge system? The reason being is that we live as human beings within the polarity duality nature of the mirror. But on the other side of the mirror, in the alternative space, or the space of variance, or the Brahmananda, or the Creator's realm, everything is based on unity consciousness, and it is more subtle. And it's as if the world seems to play hide and seek with humanity, not wishing to really reveal its true essence. And so constantly asking yourself, am I awake? Am I aware? Does come in very useful, because the universe ultimately always has your back. You see, hardly have scientists discovered a law to explain one phenomenon, then a new phenomenon is then observed that seems to contradict it, because they're coming from the mind. And it's like searching through a slippery truth, like looking for a shadow for as long as it goes on, forever and ever. The interesting thing is that the world is not only hiding its true identity, it also readily takes on the image that is assigned to it as the reflection that's showing up for you, coming back from your thoughts. And in this case, with all the fields of natural sciences, if you imagine that an object of the micro world is a particle, then that will undoubtedly be, there will be experiments to prove it in the scientific world. But if you imagine that it is not a particle, but instead it's an electromagnetic wave, the world will start to protest against you, but will willingly reveal itself in the corresponding manner. Now, the quantum wave theory shows that everything is in waves, and the dual slit experiment, which you can look up on the internet, shows that a particle has the ability to exist in many, many parallel forms. And this is where we get the parallel universes coming in. And everything is much simpler than it actually seems. There is no point in searching for the absolute truth in individual manifestations of reality that is multifaceted. We just have to simply accept the fact that reality is, for us, a dual mirror that has two sides, one of which is the physical side that we can touch, and the other is the metaphysical side that lies beyond perception, but which is no less objective. At the present time, science deals with only what is reflected in the mirror in this side of the world, whilst the esoteric realm tries to peek on the other side of the mirror. And this is what the argument about the nature of reality comes down to. So what is hidden on the reversed side of the dual mirror? Well, I've spoken about it before. It's called the space of variance, or the alternative space. And this is what is found on the other side of the mirror. It's an informational structure in which the scripts of all possible events that ever were, is, and will be are contained and stored. It's the Creator's realm. It is the all. And the number of alternative realities existing in it is infinite, just as the number of possible coordinate points on a graph is actually infinite. And so this alternative space records everything that ever was, is, and will be. And the event that actually takes place in the physical world represents the material realization of only one of those many alternatives. But like I've said before, by changing your thoughts and your belief structures, you can immediately shift your timeline into another timeline in the alternative space. This might be difficult to believe. Where exactly is this alternative space, you may be asking, and how can this ever be possible? From the perspective of the three-dimensional world that we live in, the alternative space is everywhere and at the same time nowhere at all. It could lie beyond the limits of the visible world, or it could even be in your coffee cup. Like the macro, so the macro. Either way, it is not to be found in this third dimension. And the paradox lies in the fact that when we go to bed at night and we go into that alternative space in our dreams, you see, our dreams are not illusions in the normal sense of the word. We carelessly attribute our dreams to the realm of fantasy, without suspecting that they reflect real events which could have their place in the past or the future. And we know that in dreams, people actually see pictures that do not seem to be of this world. Sometimes people see things in dreams that they quite obviously could never have seen anywhere else before. If a dream is like the brain's imitation of reality, then where does it get these incredible pictures and stories from? from the alternative space. And so if we conveniently attribute the conscious aspect of our human psyche to the mind, and the subconscious aspect of the human psyche to the soul, then you could actually say that dreaming is the flight of the soul into the alternative space. You see, the mind does not imagine its dreams. It genuinely sees them. But the soul has direct access to the entire informational field, the alternative space, where all the scripts, all the sceneries are permanently stored like frames on a film roll. And the phenomenon of time, i.e. the development of events, appears only in the process of a film roll. And whatever you're tuning into in your film roll at one particular time is the frequency of the slide, this particular slide in imagery, scenery that you are tuning into. So the mind plays the role of observer and ideas generator. So when a potential possibility is manifested as reality, the surface of the dual mirror shows a symmetrical image, and the sector of the metaphysical alternative space lies on one side of the mirror, and its material manifestation then lies on the other side of the mirror. So all living beings are balanced really at the very edge of this mirror, because their body and their mind relate to the material world. But their soul, which is eternal, remains inseparably connected to the alternative space. And if you had a look at my 5 basic laws video a month ago, it says that we are eternal beings. The one is all and the all is one. What you give out is what you get back. That you'll always exist. There'll always be change apart from the 4 basic laws, which tend to exist on all planes. And so we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Why? Because we all came into this life from that alternative space, and we will always return to the alternative space as if to the wings of the stage for a new costume to change into, and then we reappear on the surface of the mirror in a completely new outfit. And it is this theatre of masks, inside this theatre of masks, that we as actors in our play return to the never-ending cycle of parts again and again and again. And so having played out one role, the actor goes backstage for a minute, puts on a different mask, puts on some different clothes, once again enters this game again, this Leela play of life, having completely forgotten anything that happened prior to his latest appearance on the stage. And so the actor is so immersed in the image of the character that they're playing that they lose all sense of who they really truly are as an individual, as a soul being, and they get so entrenched into their body consciousness. And sometimes the wool even falls away from the actor's eyes, and they suddenly become awake and aware. And they realize that this is not their first life here on this stage. And this is when we have many people, recollecting their past lives and all of this. But in the truth of it all that exists throughout eternity, throughout all time and beyond time, is one infinite divine consciousness, which in the Vedic tradition we call the Paramatma. And this Paramatma is free. It has mukti. It is blissful as Sat, Chit, Anand. And it projects within the field of its awareness a vast amount, multiples of differentiated fractals of subjects and objects. And so each object is an actualization of that timeless potential in the light of consciousness. And each subject, which is you and I, is the same, plus it has a contracted locus of self-awareness inbuilt within. And so this divine play called the divine Leela of creation is simply the result of the natural impulse of consciousness to know itself, to express its whole totality of self-knowledge in action, arising simply from the one and only basic number one rule: unconditional love. But we forget. This unbounded light of unconditional love and consciousness contracts into finite beings of awareness out of its own free will and choice, because we always have a choice, but we forget that we do. And when these finite subjects start to identify with me, my, ego, this is mine, not thine, they start to limit themselves. They limit their cognitions. They get attached to circumstances that make up the phase of their existence, and they start to identify away from pure awareness. They move away from their true nature, from their Sat Chit Anand. And this is when they start to experience suffering. Why does suffering come into play? Because the mind takes control. The body takes control. And you think that that's all that there is. And you forget that you are a soul being having this experience as consciousness experiencing itself. And to rectify this, some people start to wake up a little bit. They get this inner urge and things start to happen in their life that they try to follow some sort of spiritual path or yoga or meditation or readings in a purpose to simply find themselves, because they've started to misidentify themselves with the true awareness of who they really are as Sat Chit Anand. So when they have that will, which is called Icha, and they have the inner knowing, because it never leaves you, which is the Gyan, they start to act out, which is the Kriya. And acting out to compromise the totality of the individual experience as well, they start to trigger some sort of a recognition or a remembering of their true cosmic identity, their true consciousness, which is only the highest divinity. It's a soul self, a soul being, the whole, the all, the wholeness and balanced vibration. And when this experiential insight is again and again and again repeated through using various tools and means, you start to slowly experience yourself as yourself. And you start to see that you're not separate and that the all is one. And then the whole is finally annihilated in the radiance of being as the expansion of complete and perfect wholeness, of beingness, of is-ness. As Aham Brahmasmi, I am the entire cosmos. And that is when one's perception fully starts to encompass the reality of their own innerverse as the whole universe. And this is where the cosmic dance comes into a perfect union. Because all that exists, has ever existed, and will exist, exists in that space of variance as one infinite divine being that's free, that's mukti, that's blissful, Satchit Anand, and whose entire body is the whole soul of consciousness. You can also start to view others with this level of consciousness, because you then realize that every person and object exists as a form or an aspect of the whole, of the unified field. And that basic reality has an innate capacity for self-awareness. And that's when you can be called being. A being whose nature is free, unbounded by any form of limitation. Because you're whole. And you're unique. Because all things are part of one vast field of energy. The energy of the light of creation, the light of consciousness, the all. And it can be called by various different names, but it really is the highest divinity. And so, I ask you today to connect to your highest divinity, to connect to your soul self, and to look out into the world that you're existing in through the eyes of your soul self, and listen through the ears of the soul self, touch with the soul self, feel as the soul self, because that is who you truly are. Am I awake? Am I aware? And just to repeat that the world is a dual mirror. Material reality is on one side, the metaphysical alternative space is on the other. And so life is like a waking non-lucid dream in which the individual has no reference point for reality. But when we come down into the auditorium and observe our film script as a detached observer, we can act dispassionately and remain as the observer. By reducing self-importance. And that's when we start to flow into that alternative space, the space of variance. Because everything is just a play of life. And the purpose of life, and likewise service to this all, lies in the co-creation. To know thyself. And this This creative spark exists in every living being, who is free to choose how they want to shape their reality. And this is mainly based on their level of consciousness. And so there is no right, there is no wrong. And who are we to judge? And so if I leave you with one thought today, it really is, do not ask, do not demand, do not struggle, just create. Follow your joy, show up, and create. Wholeness and balanced vibrations.